Awesome. Good.
And then I went to a little farm this week to check out, just to see what it's like to have farm life,
Awesome.
for my future when I live on the farm. And I'm definitely getting donkeys. They're so cute.
That's the kind of dream we can all get behind.
Mm. My sister said if you're going to get donkeys, you should just mentally prepare for ass jokes. And I was like, fine.
I've been preparing my whole life for this.
Exactly.
Candace!
Hey.
Hi, we're kind of still all getting settled.
Okay. I'm in a public place today, so I might have to mute more than normal.
Kai! Yay!
Hey there.
Hi.
So I think Leslie is the only person that I'm imagining is going to be here, but I think I want to get started anyway. I want to kind of build on, I'm curious about how much we were able to do last week and where we are with our daily commitments and the work. I wanted to pick up from an email I got from Kai this week and from a conversation I just had with Paul. That was basically great curriculum, but to newcomers of this material, there's a lot to it. And I'm not really sure how much of this I'm supposed to be doing and how much of this I'm supposed to be skipping, or there's a lot of stuff here. And also there's some things happening, but there's a lot of things here. I'm curious about where we are with that kind of material. And I just want to reiterate that I'm hoping as much of this process is organic to what we need in the moment. And all the materials I'm giving us, I think, have the subliminal, even if you don't do them, just looking at them and identifying. So this week, I'm hoping to get better at just communicating the bare essential message that we're going to be working on for the next 7 weeks, that each of those daily things is an expression of that. And to do that well, I am just curious to see, before we go into the free writing, I'd want to do just a catch up on where we are with the material, what has stood out as being most transformative or any insights, and just how we've been interacting with the material so far, since we're all doing that differently. Does that make sense? So kind of a review. I'm also wondering, maybe just show of hands, how many of us had time to do the dashboard work of figuring out how full our dashboards are in different areas. Cool. So we have a great, let's go around now that, what was this last week for us? What stood out as being significant or important? What did we learn? What are we doing? Any of those?
I'll start with a couple things. I just would encourage first timers to not feel overwhelmed by it. It is so much, right? And so I just picked some things and then moved in that direction if I felt it, and then walked away from so much other stuff, because it is literally, unless you have probably 4 hours a day or something to commit to it, it's time consuming, right? Yeah. It's a lot of writing opportunities. It's a lot of reading opportunities. It's, which is how you get stuck in it round 3 and you still haven't done all the shit, right? I haven't done the work.
Stuck in it, Jeannie? Is that really the word you're going to use?
I mean, consuming of the generous material.
Thank you.
So I don't feel overwhelmed by that, because it is a lot. And then just from my front, I just was telling Sean, I made my list of like what I'm committing to. And I feel like that has been really helpful to write down the list of what you promise yourself you're going to do on a daily, and get it done. That was my, like, that commitment, the contract, I think is a really valuable piece.
And can you say what your 4-day, do you mind sharing your commitment you made with yourself to strengthen its accountability further with our social network here? What are you doing every day?
I told myself, I committed to saying I would write every day, read every day, exercise every day. I built a do it list, and it's things like craft or exercise or exercise bonus, cleaning, play, like it's just a bunch of stuff because I am stuck in a rut of lounging and napping and watching TV, and I don't need to do that. So it's fine, but I'm committed to that. And then a once a week artist date. So anyway, that's kind of
Awesome.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Super
And it's
helpful.
great. And I made a little chart, and every day I write, yes, I, ran the skate ramps with kids as my exercise today. And, whatever, I cleaned the dishes today. And that, if you make it too big, it can be overwhelming too. So it feels smallish. Anyway, that's me.
Thank you. I think that does help. I should be really clear about that. I think you can get a lot out of this course if you even just 2 minutes a day. I would say at least 2 minutes a day of just checking in on your pages, maybe 3. So do some kind of either reading or processing of information that seems relevant to what we're doing. And I think you could spend up to 4 hours. Thank you for that list.
Mm. Yep.
Other check-ins, it's close to mine. I actually have my daily list of doing, and you also said 6 out of 7 days. You're okay missing a day on the whole
Correct.
list.
I said 6 out of 7, and I wrote
Great.
6 out of 7 in my contract because
Great.
it gives you space to mess up.
Great. I also use that. I have daily free writing, daily word composing on the computer. I added in exercise and I added in music, at least 40 minutes of music. I also added a do not screen after dark, which I've lost. I started out so good on that commitment, and I just have gotten bad on it the last 2 days. So I did a do not do every day of mine. Yes, and also there's another commitment to pay attention, like kind of a more personal, spiritual one, to just pay greater attention to what's going on, which is more amorphous and didn't make it in the formal contract.
I was going to say, Sean, based on what Kai said, and maybe just kind of all of the content,
Yeah.
I think that I really love that the prompts aren't going anywhere. So I try not to stress about them. And in fact, what's funny is I even kind of like, this sounds so crazy, but I kind of am one of those people who's like, I don't want to use them up. Like, I don't want to use it up. So I've actually been like saving my prompts for days where I don't know what to write.
Awesome.
I have no direction. There's nothing I want to listen to. I'm not feeling inspired. So I've actually used the prompts too, in place of like, if I am stuck on my morning pages and I have nothing to write about,
Awesome.
I like to flip through there and kind of use that as a stimulation. And it's funny because, like you said earlier too, they're all kind of like woven into what we're talking about always. So I remember one day I missed the free write because I was late to class, but something I had written in my prompt earlier that week was super relevant, and it just like clicked right into what we were talking about. So I think that's the big thing for me. The prompts aren't going anywhere, and you can use them as tools whenever you need them. And actually, I think I see myself approaching them at different times and probably having a lot of different things to say. So I love having them there. It's nice to have the structure and just to not feel overwhelmed by them, and no one's going to quiz me on it later. So
Candace, I really think that Sean thought you meant like the prompts aren't going anywhere, they're useless. But what I think I heard you say is that they're not going away.
They're not going to disappear on me. They're not.
Right.
They're not going to. There's no time. It's not like a timed test.
So I laugh about that
This
because
class isn't going anywhere, Sean.
yeah, no, honestly, in the philosophy text I used at Front Range, it was like the final paragraph is like, now that we've reached the end, we're right back at the beginning. In some ways, we haven't gone anywhere. And it's like, oh shit. So wait, why did I read this whole philosophy book? What?
Well, and there's also truth to it too, right? Because with that sort of question, I mean, the way we're programmed is like, oh, there must be an answer that I must get to. And so I've got to go there. Samantha, it was so funny because the way it sounded is like, I try to figure out where it's going and then it doesn't go there. So these go nowhere. These go nowhere. Sorry.
That's perfect. And it also reminds me of Samantha, week 5, I think week 5.5 of the last cohort, saying, so I opened up your first email of the year to the class. She's like, I finally started the contract with myself. Was that week 5.5 that you did the contract and shared that, Samantha? Do you remember how proudly you made that announcement?
Yeah. I do.
I freaking loved that.
Yeah, it was on. I signed it on 16th of October. 16th of October.
So great. I also
Very late.
I loved that. And I love, Candace, the idea of prompts as like a backstop. And I almost might make, I think I might make a bookmark or like a one sheet crib sheet. So if you just go to your pages, if you don't have something, these are like these could be prompts, invitations. Okay, other progresses, things that are standing out.
I decided to do some sort of commitment as well. I still haven't created a new contract, but I am doing like gratitude notes for the month. I noticed that other folks do that. A lot of times they post it somewhere. I'm just writing it in my book. Then the other thing I decided to do on my birthday was try to do 57 walks before the end of the year. I'm going to have to walk a lot in December, I think, to make that work out as well as I thought. But I'm also on every walk, I'm supposed to write down something that I noticed, because I liked you and Jeannie doing like you're noticing things. And so that's been everything from, oh, sorry.
You're good.
Ducks to eyes on the aspen trees to the other day, I saw little teeny tiny raccoon paw print tracks on Lincoln didn't even notice them. The dog ran across this fridge and I realized some raccoons had just gone across with little wet paws the other day. So yeah, trying to write every morning as well. Maybe I need to give myself that 6 out of 7 days so that when I mess one up, I don't feel like I failed.
Or 5. And I heard this morning that the science shows that every other day is enough to keep the discipline train going. And I've noticed that in my practice too, that missing 2 days, coming back the 3rd day is way harder, even to just get a tiny bit on there. So research shows 3, you could even go 3 out of 7, as long as you're not doing missing 2 days. And supposedly you still get a lot of the cognitive benefit.
So every other, just you can skip a day, but don't skip 2.
Correct. Okay. That might be an even easier commitment to make with yourself.
Okay, thank you.
I put in the chat because the 2 things that you said are incredibly synchronistic with what we're doing today, which is synchronicity and exploring different ways to expose ourselves with synchronicity, broadly speaking, and the science of synchronicity. A noticing journal, walking, and the whole idea of gratitude gratitude notes are all really, really cool in that conversation. Maybe unbeknownst to you, Leslie, but you're like right where we're going.
I guess I was going to say too, on top of my share from the content and all of the material, is I was kind of flailing earlier in the week because I have all this extra time and it's like overwhelming amount of free time and like none of my week is structured. And I've been kind of talking to you, Sean, about working on like a planner that kind of weaves all of this stuff into my life and my self-care with my professional life and my personal life. So that's kind of what I committed to this week, was planning my week and actually physically blocking out time, and using colorful highlighters and making it fun. But I had to learn to structure my week because I had almost like a breakdown with overwhelm of extra time this week and was like, I don't even know what to start. Like, I don't know what to do first. I don't know what to do last. Too much time can be really overwhelming. So I think I committed to structure a little bit and tried to make it playful, as playful as possible. So.
Thank you, Candace.
I guess my week has also been a mixture of Jeannie's and Candace's in terms of being kind of like low energy. And then I was like, I didn't write anything at all this week. I mean, today is the first time I picked up my journal. And I don't know whether this is another sign, but I can't find my notebook. I'm always losing things. And I know where it is, but because I remember the last thing I wrote in it, but I know I'll find it at the right moment. But then I was saying that I didn't write anything this whole week. And then I actually said, no, I actually did. I just didn't write anything in my journal this week. So I actually wrote two things. Like the one thing that I just want to read is, it was like a take on the verse in the Bible. I can't remember whether it's Deuteronomy 17. So how I wrote this week, it was called Still We Rise. I said, we sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. We are warmed by fires we did not kindle. And we walk in the footprints made by women who sometimes stumbled. And like them, still we rise, still I rise. I think I was feeling a bit like nothing's moving, right? And then it's like there's been all this buildup of what things I want to do, things coming together. And then I just felt like this whole week was just like a week of nothingness. And then I said, it's okay to have a rest week during your resting months. Maybe I just needed to kind of like stop thinking of putting too much pressure on myself or something. I'm not quite sure what this week means, but it has been one of those weeks. Yeah.
Well, Samantha, you probably wrote more bang for buck in your 12 words than I wrote in my 4,000. So you've got that going for you.
Yeah, that was great, Samantha.
I would almost like to hear that again.
I know, right? Oh my gosh.
Would you read it one more time?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's, we sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. We are warmed by fire kindle, and we walk in the footprints made by women who sometimes stumbled. And like them, still we rise, still I rise. So it was like Maya Angelou and the Bible mixed with my little imprint there. And I was just thinking about how sometimes like I try to always be the first to do something, to have this miraculous breakthrough. And it's like, I don't have to always be the first to do something. I can just follow the path that others have done, and knowing that, you know, the path I am making, others will walk along that. And it just reminded me that we don't do things by ourselves. And that's kind of what encompasses what I'm trying to do, in a sense of making those wells so others may drink from it, and, you know, planting those trees that others may get shade from it. The picture of the garden, again, the garden now has a well. Yeah.
So can I jump in there? To Paul and Kai, I'm an unknown quantity, I know that. But Samantha, what you just said is so in line with what I've been experiencing and what I've been, you know, really thinking and spending a lot of time thinking about and spending time with. So to answer your original question, Sean, you know, for me, I have not done a contract either. As you may remember that this not this Friday, but the Friday after is the last day with my current position, which has been a soul-sucking, hellish experience. Sorry, Leslie, because you know I love CSU and you know I love extension, but you know the more distance that I have from what I have experienced, the more I realize that human beings should not have to go through such horrible work experiences and be in such horrible work environments. Another day, another story. But you know, since I started working with this group and with Sean, for me, it was every day. I'm going to work and I'm going to play, and I'm going to do both of those things. And in each category, I'm going to do something that I feel is important and significant, and that's it. And I am not going to worry about the contract because it'll come. Still hasn't come. I'm hoping that after December 3rd, I'll be able to launch more fully into, you know, everything I've been thinking about. But I really do feel like that I've done significant things on either side. And, you know, Samantha, you know, what you just said in terms of like being something that's significant and original, and, you know, only I, you know, it's original, right? Enough said. You know, something that I've been struggling with is that in the different training experiences and professional development opportunities that I want to create, I've wanted them to all be original, right? Like I wanted to be able to sit down with a pen and paper and create start to finish. But then in conversations that I've had with Sean, and the sharing of resources, which is still very lopsided, Sean, I know that, but just, be patient with me. I realized that there's no reason to not follow the path that others have taken. There are so many great resources out there. Nothing is truly original at the end of the day. It's just perhaps a matter of how you pull on, the different pathways, the different trails, the different things, and create your own path, right? Create your own trail. And like you said, Samantha, others will follow if you put your heart and soul into it. So that's how I would add to what you said, Samantha, and also answer your question, Sean.
Awesome.
Nice to meet you, Kyle. So, yeah, I had a brief discussion with Sean earlier today and talking about how I felt overwhelmed, and it's interesting. I set up a conversation with you, Sean, and then, as I told you, shortly after that, I started getting clarity, and and it's funny because they always say that for when you enter therapy, for therapists to realize that when somebody makes the first phone call, you have the first contact, or they know that, or they schedule an appointment, it's begun, right? And so there's no question that was true for me. I got down to the fact that for me it was about time, and hearing about your respective contracts and all that. It's helpful, but I just felt like there's no way. There's so many things I want to do and have some level of skill at, or whatever, that I kind of live in this frustration and overwhelm if I'm not watching, if I'm not in the present, in the moment. So so what I came down to was time and sort of grace, because and I heard a lot of that. I really appreciate what many of you said about who are not first timers, talking about, saving the prompts for this or that, or only getting, not even getting to starting the course until the 5th week or whatever.
Well, you're still in the course. It's just how you interact with the material outside the course. But yes.
Right.
Keep going.
Right. Exactly. So, right. So all that really is helpful. And my contract was to write either my morning writing, or if, like you were saying, if nothing's happening, then I'll go to a prompt. It was interesting. At one point, I went to the prompt because I knew I was behind, and skipped the morning writing, and realized that's fine. It doesn't matter that much, but I realized I was moving into, I just want to get done. So I've done my homework. Wow. And it's like, and I'm skipping the being in the moment part. That's the most important thing, to make space for the creativity to come and all that. And so, like you, Sean, I've been trying to pay even more attention than I had been to what's going on, to being mindful and what's going on around me, what's going on inside me, et cetera, to try to be in the moment and hold all of it lightly. I did write something that you mentioned, that you did a room on gratitude. Gratitude's what we're going to be talking about. So I wanted to read this real fast. And I started this a while ago, but then kind of came back to it. And it's just called Thanks. Let's see. The chorus is, that's all I have really, is when I'm grateful, I'm not afraid at the end of the day. Yeah, the word that I want to say at the end of my life when I say goodbye is thanks. Just thanks. I give thanks every day. Thanks, just thanks, even when things don't go my way or something. And the only other thing I have is, and a sudden chill climbs the ladder of my spine once more. When joy comes knocking as hard as a fist on a door, I realize I've been holding my breath and let out a sigh. Thanks. So I'm just, I'm actually writing again. So that is exciting. So I think that's it.
I love the lyrical phrasing. I could hear the structure of different musical phrases based on how you wrote. It's like progressive phrasing.
Yeah. Cool.
I love too, Paul, what you said about like paying attention and just being aware of when you're starting to treat it like school, or when you're like, am I just rushing to get my homework done? And actually in my morning pages, a lot of times if I can't do them or I choose to do something different, I just write in there what I did instead. Like instead I took the dog for a walk, and just thought instead of writing. So, and that way I'm still showing up to the pages, but I'm aware that I'm skipping them, and I'm acknowledging that I skipped it. Like today I did something different instead of writing for 3 pages. So, but I love what you said about just presence and being aware of when you're starting to treat it like something different. That's awesome. I think that's a big step. I want to get there.
Thanks, Candace. And I love what you just said about showing up and deciding to do something different and writing that down. Because if nothing else, like let's say I just feel this compelling need. I've got 20 minutes and I need to call this client to schedule or something like that. And it's not like, oh no, I can't do that. It's more like, it's like where I'd want to be is, okay, I'm choosing to do that, but I'm going to write that down. Because then at least I can see the pattern that emerges and, how well I'm able to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember keeping a food journal once because I was having, stomach issues. So I was tracking and trying to figure out what was happening. And the big thing was to never lie to my food journal. Like you had a burger and then you had pizza for dinner. Don't lie to your food journal. This is not where we come to lie. So it's like that same kind of thing, like staying accountable.
That's great.
Paul, what I think is interesting about that is sometimes when I'm entering into like, got to do my homework, got to do the task, it actually makes me do it. And then you're sitting in it and you're like, oh, this is actually more valuable than I entered it with, right? My attitude is like, got to do the checklist, but then you're in it because you got to do the checklist. And then for me, it was almost like, I don't consider it harmful to consider it the homework because you're then forced to do it. And then you're in it and you're valuing the space that you're in it with. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jean.
I read somewhere this week, it was a quote that said, if you give yourself 3 weeks to clean your house, it will take you 3 weeks. If you give yourself 3 hours, it will take 3 hours. And I just said, wow, that is so simple, but so profound. And I think it really is about getting things into these bite-sized chunks, like in the sense of, okay, fine, maybe I'm not gonna be able to do a 1-hour run or exercise, but I can do a 20-minute fast-paced walk, and letting that be enough for that day. And I think we talked about time and how, I think it was really Sean, about how time is more like, I have a time, but I just probably don't have the energy. And trying to figure out whether it's the time that I don't have or the energy, and then getting to the root cause of why I'm lacking in one of those.
Moving right along, but not going anywhere. Thanks, Candace. Just gonna remember that every class from here on out. The prompts don't go anywhere. No, I'm just joking.
We have so much good merch.
Yes, Kai. Yes. Redate. I like that. Okay. What's so cool about this is I want to bring in terms of gratitude, this is my favorite week of the workshop, I think. In fact, if I was to spin off my most interested of all the 7 modules, if you see each of these as a workshop, where this workshop is, week 3, is probably my favorite and what I most want to spin off into something more than just a week. And it's the thing that sticks with me the longest, usually, when I tap into it. And it's the thing that I think the most past students have said, ooh, I still really like this part of it, which is 2 things, 2 words, synchronicity and attention. That's what we're doing this week. So if you don't look at any of the material and you want to take a complete rest week and you don't want to open any emails and you want to just leave the meeting right now, because fuck it, you've had enough of this. Those are the 2 words you need. Synchronicity and attention. If you add the writing practice, it would be a synchronicity journal or an attention journal. Point is, you're paying attention to what you're paying attention to. Okay, here's the cool shit. And this is leading into the free writing. What I learned today, how this is new this time around, is that gratitude is a practice that affects our brain if we practice it, right? And there's different research on just making gratitude lists doesn't seem to be as beneficial, which it can get you into it, as slowing down, picking something on that list, and going deep into how it feels to be grateful for that thing on that list. So you slow down and you get specific. I'm not only grateful for this person, I'm grateful for this about this person, which makes me actually think about this about this person. And now I'm beginning to feel gratitude, and that's the neurochemical. You get a good dose. And by D-O-S-E, I mean dopamine, short-lived, stress reliever, pain reliever, oxytocin, longer lasting, less of a crash, more longer feeling in a team, on a community, part of something bigger than yourself. Relaxing, joy-provoking. Serotonin alongside oxytocin, which is kind of like an uplifting feeling. It's the main thing. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors are an antidepressant. Then epinephrine, energy. Okay, what I learned doing research this morning for this class is that those things happen more when they're connected to a story. So if I have a story that I'm following and you fit into that story and I can articulate that to you and to me in a way that feels like something, that's when we're starting to change the neurochemistry, neurobiology. And like a garden or a gym, you're doing this little by little every day to increase your happiness set point up to 25%. The research shows. We each apparently have a happiness set point that counts to 50% of how happy we report ourselves to be. There's a debate on whether or not we can change that. This is one of the activities that does show to change it up to 25%. To avoid toxic positivity and bullshit, we don't want to be happy when everything around us is terrible. And some of us have our happiness set point differently. Anyway, why I like this week, this is all what's cool about this, is that we're paying attention to synchronicity. And there's some really interesting science around how synchronicity works. And it's connected to this idea of serendipity. Serendipity used as a happy-go-lucky, oh, I serendipitously found a $7 bill. Synchronicity is oh my God, I heard from my friend that I haven't heard from in a long time. And they're going through some shit. We talked about it for 2 hours. I don't know that would be oh, that's serendipity. It's more no, something's happening here. They called today at this time. The science of synchronicity is that your brain making meaning around that. My friend called me at this time because it means that I have serious work to do in this area of my life, which is what we're talking about today. I'm telling myself a story. I'm finding things in my environment correspond to my story. Propel that story. For today, an example, and I know we're going to get to the free writing. Actually, let's just do that now. Do you believe in synchronicity, serendipity? Do you believe in chance encounters? Can you identify any chance encounters or things that have happened that seem to line up? Like, whoa, this happened at this time with this thing, and then this thing. Do you believe, are you a kind of person that believes in that thing? Is that real? The synchronicity real? If it is or if it isn't, maybe that's the theoretical question. What's happened that's significant in the last week or two? The other, yeah, let's just go for that one. And let's do a 10-minute one this time since we had a bigger catch up, because I have another small one that I hope to get to before the end of our time that more connects to what's going on this next week. So we're going to go 10 minutes. And the question is synchronicity. What do you think about it? And what's happened that seems to be significant? Time events lining up in time. Synchronicity just means happening in time together. And again, rules are, if this prompt isn't working, what's coming up for you right now? What do you need? What do you really want to say? What do you want to say but you haven't had time to say? If there's something carrying over from our conversation that we just had, I would rather almost have that conversation than have us move forward into material for this next week. So as always, I could ask, where's your heart? What's alive for you right now? If we're stuck on that one. Or what am I grateful for? This is another one that is another way of playing with this. Okay, 10 minutes from now. Sorry. All right, that's 10 minutes. Speaking of time, could be a long or short time. What is Leslie? Oh, and there was a resource question that Leslie had earlier too.
I cannot get that song out of my head now. My day is ruined. The Police, Synchronicity is going loop, loop,
Okay.
loop. And that was an earworm. Once you get that in there, it's a hot mess.
Leslie, I was
amazing.
Leslie, I was actually just now, while you started to talk, pulling it up, and I was just going to start playing it.
You're cruel. Don't do it to anyone else.
You know, so same thing here.
It's going and going and going. I love that song though. I love that era of the Police. I thought they were really good at that point.
Oh.
Put him over the edge. Oh wait, he's back.
No, that was internet connection unstable. Sorry about that.
You're back.
There he is.
Sorry about that. You also asked for, there was some other resource that you were asking for. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
The transcription?
Yeah, someone had talked about now that like when they're walking around and they're on their walk and they want to take a note, there's an easy app to use. And I can't remember what you all said. I tried something that didn't work because it doesn't allow you to title your little audio notes. Like it's a voice, like you just go blah, 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 and it saves your thing so you can remind yourself what you were thinking.
So the best one that I found is called Otter, O-T-T-E-R.
Thank you.
Like to utter with a U, but like, you know how the computer always gets it wrong? Yeah. Exactly.
I like
That's
it. Okay.
Or whoever wrote that. I don't know. Can't see now. Is that shown?
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant.
Yeah, but with 2 T's, not 3. Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, just like an otter, like OtterBox.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just funny because it's actually it's a play onto utter. You know how the computer always gets the words wrong, like.
I did not know that.
So it's a deliberate play, like well, helps you remember the name of the app. I use it for dream journaling. Like when I wake up in the middle of the night and I really don't want to turn on the light and write, I might just like speak the dream, like the way I remember it, into the app, and then yeah. It's a lot more accurate than Apple or Google or any of or Samsung or any of the other speech recognition engines that I know of.
Thank you, Kai. I appreciate that.
I literally just use voice memos on my iPhone.
Me too.
Yeah.
Does it transcribe them though?
Yeah. I mean, it's literally an audio recording.
Okay.
So
then you can just put it.
You're right. It doesn't transcribe them. You would have to come back later. Oh, maybe it does. It's a tech. If it does, it's not something I know or do.
So I want to actually go to Kai if we.
You can also upload voice memos and things like that to the Otter app. Yeah. There's like a limited amount you can upload every month for free. I've never gone over. So apparently we've gone to me. What do you want to know?
Or it looks like Candace was trying to get in there as well. I just realized that. Go ahead, Candace.
I'll jump in because I'm a crazy synchronicity cheerleader, and this one just went crazy for me. And it just got even crazier when you started talking about otters and OtterBox. So anyway, I'll just jump in, I guess. I was thinking about, can we like embrace the simplicity of synchronicity instead of having to justify it, like, and call it coincidence? Or, so I kind of wrote that, like, can I embrace the simplicity of synchronicity and not talk myself out of it? I think that's a big part of it. But sometimes we don't want to tell people because, like, when you tell the story, it almost sounds crazy or like you made it up. You're like, you wouldn't believe what happened. Like I was literally saying someone's name and then they called, or just all those little tiny things that happen. And then I called synchronicity a sacred signpost that tells you you're on the right path, which I thought was really cool. And that kind of comes from shamanic cultures. Like if you're seeing synchronicities, that means you're in flow. It means you're where you're supposed to be. And as I've said before, my life is just like saturated in synchronicity. And the last class, I talked about how I had set my camera down because I went on one of my artist dates and I took a bunch of pictures, and my friend was like, why don't you take pictures more? And I said, well, I couldn't develop the film when I was younger. So I thought I'm no good at photography. And then I was reading The Artist's Date or The Artist's Way last night, and I saw that exact example in the book and was like, drop the mic. Oh my gosh, someone's in my head. Is just so synchronistic, like down to the sentence that, like, she set her camera down because she couldn't develop the film and decided she was no good. And then I wrote, what did I write? We see synchronicity as spooky and we speculate instead of celebrate it. Like, it's too good, it's too easy, it's too simple. And then we start to speculate. And I think that's where we make a mess, and then we get thrown off of our path. And then my other thing was an OtterBox reference, because I have an idea for a product for Otter, and I had kind of given up on it. And then I went to a restaurant the other day and I met like a guy who works there, like really high up, and was like, of course you work at OtterBox, and of course you want me to come like pitch my product, because I walked into this restaurant and that's just how synchronicity is working. So anyway, I'm a super synchronicity cheerleader. So sorry, I just had to share all the things.
Yeah, one of the things that came to me in this last week was always listen with a beginner's mind. So I've been doing a lot of exercises at the moment to strengthen my intuition. I do this one remote viewing tournament app like every night. And the interesting thing with remote viewing, and you have to try it out if you or read this stuff. I'm not going to go into detail now if you don't don't believe it's for real, but it's amazing how it's just instant when you get the image or whatever, and then the moment afterwards already your mind starts trying to make sense of the image you saw or whatever, and wants to turn it into something else. No, isn't it like this? Or changes the shape that So I always have to draw it immediately or type in the word or whatever came. And when I do that, yeah, it's usually accurate. This is like, blind testing. So it's taught me a lot about how much self-doubt I have and how I always second guess my thoughts, because I think the first thought, it's one of the things with writing practice actually, the first thought is mediocre, don't go with the first thought, like go with the second or the third or the fourth or whatever, because those are interesting thoughts then. But then, what you end up teaching yourself is to over-intellectualize stuff by wanting to please other people by, being entertaining also. And I think there's something I'm trying to get back to for myself about being true. Sometimes we avoid being true because we want to be smart or we want to sound good or, and that first thing that comes out is not the thread that you follow, because you think, oh no, let me try to invent something better. When actually, what I'm learning through all of these things is because of the nature of the universe. Our connection to truth is instant. And I've had some amazing synchronicities these past few weeks, like manifestation kind of synchronicities. And I'm constantly in a learning process where, it's even some of the words in the weeks for this course sometimes are exactly a word that, like, I'll be seeing rooms on Clubhouse, for instance, coming up with that word, and then, become part of that conversation and know that that's right for me at that moment. It's a way, and there was a room on synchronicities with all the scientific research with these amazing professors at some university, I forget where now. And if you want to look it up, you can probably find more of the information through the Synchronicity Institute, which is connected to Sky Nelson Isaacs, who's a physicist. I don't know if you met him on.
I put that in the chat before you said that, by the way.
You already you did?
Yeah, and I don't know if you were reading the chat before.
As you were saying it.
Before, and if you weren't reading the chat, I was the second time that happened. I had stick with first thoughts and avoid second and third thoughts, because that's what Natalie Goldberg says about writing. Is that as soon as you go to second thoughts, it's like a horse riding a horse. You got to like actually just ride the horse. So stick with your first thoughts. That's where it is. And I wrote that, and then you said we've gone through this process of overthinking. So anyway,
and what somebody else told me about that in this last week, it was Brian Baruch, is this healer on Clubhouse. He said that children are masters. Children are born as masters, and we unlearn our mastery. We forget our mastery. And yeah, because they just know how to do everything, and it's spontaneous. You don't have to think about it, they just do it, and they don't worry about the results, or just get it done. So yeah, lots of different things. I don't know if you want to know my synchronicity stories. There's probably not enough time for all of this. But maybe I can tell you briefly. Actually, Sky invited me to one of his workshops, and it was amazing. Blew my mind. The physics behind all of this stuff. One of the things he said is, reality is what happens when you're not watching. Because we're the observer, and reality kind of happens behind the scenes sometimes. But then I found out he's also a musician, and I was looking for music for my workshops that was copyright free. So I listened to his music, and it's like perfect. And I had this excuse that I can't do workshops on Clubhouse because I can't use people's copyrighted music, like that's just that's like bad form. And I mentioned it to him, and he's like, yeah, sure, you can use my music. You can use any of my music for free, whenever you want to, no problem. You don't have to credit me. So that was amazing. And then, of course, to find out that he runs the Synchronicity Institute thing, and is like, serious on all the scientific research behind the stuff, which I didn't even know about. And then the other thing was I got interested in the Heart Math Institute. And I installed the app on my phone. I was interested in a process called coherence. So it's brain heart coherence. And Sean was having this thing about coherence going on as well at the time. It was in one of the things which I've been trying to read through and not get too overwhelmed with. So I found out you need this quite pricey device to plug into your phone to make the app work, to like test whether you're coherent. But it tells you then if your brain waves and your heart are in coherence. And of course, then, if you are, then there's all the scientific evidence around the results and whatever. So I'm like, okay, it's too expensive. But I'd written as my goal for this course that I want to play more. So I get offered this babysitting job. And I go, and the woman is a certified heart math coach. And she says, and I tell her about my interest, and she says like, oh, you want that device? Yeah, sure. Like I never use it, anymore. Here, you can keep it for as long as you want to. She puts it in my hand. So now, like within 2 weeks of me installing those apps and thinking, oh, I don't know if, I'm using the app and I have the device. And so those are two examples of amazing things that have just happened that are synchronous for me. And then I'll stop.
That's freaking awesome, A. And B, I wanted to tell you, Kai, that I listened this week to a music teacher who said one of his tasks was to make his students intentionally write a shitty song. In that, the purpose being, I want you to write a shitty song. And he said almost always those songs came back with valuable content because it was first thoughts. It was truth thoughts that they just, and we spend so much time trying to sound intellectual or entertaining or funny, all the stuff you said. And he was saying this in his whatever I was watching, I can't even remember what it was, but he was saying that our obsession with trying to be interesting to other people can sometimes ruin the essence of simplicity of, in his case, simple lyrics and simple music.
Yeah, and I think also in that being actually understood, you know, sometimes we think, I know I make this mistake. I know that I second guess myself because I think, oh, they're not going to get it if you say it that way, you know. So then I try to overcomplicate it, but actually sometimes just blurting it out, maybe people get the energy behind it and they understand more of what you're really trying to say, what your true intention is.
This also, one more thing, just reminded me, I listened to, of course, my husband, John Mayer, interview Adele this week. She said that all of her takes on all her music are first vocal recordings. And she said, because you cannot reproduce the authenticity of the emotion that comes out in a first vocal piece. That's crazy, A, just on concept, and B, the fact that she can do it well. And she said that she is like
practice.
Right.
That's practice.
The whole thing about
That's
practice.
the thing.
To be Adele, you just got to sing a
Yes.
lot.
And she also said, though, she is noticeably flat and sharp, and she doesn't give a shit because that's the authenticity of her voice in that moment with that first raw emotion. Anyway, yeah.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And I can't believe she does it.
Well, she's practiced.
Yeah.
That's why she can, you know, that's the whole thing. It's who she is, and then she gets to express it in the moment, and it comes out and it sounds perfect to us. And she's like, oh, you know, because she's an expert, so she can identify like all the flaws.
Right, of course.
But she doesn't let her stop herself at that point in time, which is the beautiful thing, because we're all experts at all kinds of things, and the more we know about them, the more we compare ourselves to social expectations, or you know, or the ego bullshit comes into play, and then we're just like, oh, I can possibly do that, because that's not how it's done, you know, like what will people say, you know, or I'll make a serious mistake if I do it that way. You know, all these kind of yap.
Right.
You're an athlete. Athletes do that almost every time they go perform. You don't get to do it again.
True.
So just think about that. So each time you shoot a free throw, do one of those things on a balance beam, the reason you're able to go out and do it and have us all go, oh, that was flawless, is because you practiced it so many thousands of hours. And some of us, it wouldn't matter how much we practice. I don't believe that bullshit that one guy wrote that book about, that if you do something enough, you'll be good at it. There's no freaking way I'm going to be doing flips on a balance beam. Let's get real. But I do think it is interesting that when an artist does that and takes that risk, it seems so unique, and yet there are people who do it every day of their life, like a news broadcaster. It's raw every single time, and I am still kind of blown away because her voice is, I don't know, there's some unique timbre about it that I just like really like. And I watched that part of that live thing she did with Oprah, and I was like, damn. How does she do that every time?
She's also not a great interviewer, in part because she's unpolished, and I love that about her. Anyway, not to be on an Adele obsession, but it is about the authenticity piece of it that is like synchronicity here in this moment. Like, there's value in first drafts because of how authentic they are.
I like to, I taking what so many of you have said, I like to think about all of this in relation to stretching. So it's that there are athletic, um, connections to that. There are take a chance actions to that in relation to music or whatever else that you do. But stretching is something that historically for me, I've not had a problem doing professionally, but it's always been within the context of a safety net, right? It's always been within the context of a guaranteed paycheck or an organization that's very stable and structured. And now I'm finding myself completely out of that element and basically going back to the beginning and having no confidence in anything that I'm able to do, which isn't true, but it's what I've got to fight through, in my head, because my heart will prevail. I'm not concerned about that. But I do think that, for me, it does connect to the conversation about being serendipitous or synchronistic, because a spin that I would put on those two terms is this, that, I think that serendipity is oftentimes a little bit more out of our control. It really is walking down the street and having, something hit you over the head, whether it's a person that you haven't seen in 20 years or whether it's literally, I don't know, something hitting you on the head and making, something anew. Whereas, being synchronous, I think there's a little bit more control into that. And, that's an approach. And thank you, Sean, for putting that term to what it is that I have just always done, because I stretched very early on in my career and didn't necessarily put a ton of conscious effort into it. I just became good at it over time. And that is just approaching people out of the blue, cold calls, whatever you want to call it, taking every opportunity that I can to meet someone, to make a connection, and to look for those synchronistic connections, right? So whether it's a conference or a social hour or, whether it's professional or social, I always walk into situations looking how to make something of them. And putting some synchronistic meaning behind them. So it's been fun and exciting for me recently to kind of take that approach out of the context of a structured organization and really just be like, all right, here we go. Here we go. We're gonna jump in and we're gonna practice, right? We're gonna stretch, we're gonna practice, and we're gonna be true in those moments, even though it might not necessarily be perfect or refined. It'll be authentic. There won't be anything to say about it not being my moments not being authentic.
Two things I really want to pick up on because they connect to where we're going. I want to make sure. Kyle, you made a really great distinction between realizing things that are out of our control in one way, that there's things that, and I just want to make the toxic positivity disclaimer here that I've seen people get caught in this, oh, nothing synchronistic happened to me last week. And other people are like, oh, I had 15 synchronistic things happen to me. It's like, oh, well, I must suck. No, don't play that comparison game because a lot of this is outside of our control. But secondly, the flip side of that is leaning on cultivating a situation or being more receptive to the environmental factors. Kai saying yes to the babysitting gig. This is what Sky Nelson Isaac talks about. Opens a decision tree to where he's now exposed to this new thing. Him listening to her say heart math and the way he responded to that opens up another decision tree around that. And so that's why I wrote Circumference of Luck. And the other free write I kind of want to spend at least a little bit of time today, and we don't need to write it down, is what can we do to increase our circumference of luck, synchronicity? And why, Kyle, you just brought this up so good because you said talking with other people, doing these other experiences, that you're on the lookout, so to speak, for those kinds of things. If you think about the gardening metaphor again, what's the soil? How can I set the soil to have a greater opportunity to practice this attentional kind of awareness? I like walking and conversation. So just to put that out there, that's basically the challenge for next week. It's not to necessarily experience more synchronicity, but play with our attention while also playing with how we might modify our circumstances, pages, conversations, work time, to give us more to pay attention to.
I think, Sean, this kind of goes back to what Paul was saying earlier, like with acknowledging, right? So like,
Yes,
if
totally.
someone has acknowledged that they want to go to therapy and they make the call, I think being able to share more of your synchronicities is the way to find more. Because if you don't acknowledge it and then share it, then people don't know there was a synchronicity that even happened. So maybe acknowledging it and then sharing it with someone, and then they might be like, oh my gosh, I was just talking to someone else who. So I think that's the way you see that circle build and expand, like rapidly. Because like I said, I think a lot of us don't share it because we think it sounds crazy, honestly.
Like, and writing it down is a way of sharing it with ourselves. So we can be like, holy shit, that's actually, whoa, that really did happen.
And the do shit, try shit thing,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Which is where we're going week 4. So,
Oh, yeah.
but yes, exactly. Do shirt.
Does it also tie into like just being mindful and present in the moment?
Yes.
We might miss a lot of things that are happening around us, and for serendipity kind of seems to me things just happen by chance. But something that I've been trying to say to myself is remember when you prayed for everything that you have now, because it really is a case of, is it synchronicity, or is it because I actually have been working towards this? It just, I didn't get that sort of feeling that I'd accomplished it at that time, but it's all manifesting and being fruitful now. So, and I think it ties in what I was saying earlier, that sometimes we tend to think accomplishments, there has to be a struggle immediately before it in order for us to be like, oh yes, look, she was rags and riches, or she last place and managed to get to first place. But how about if the hard work was put in a while ago? And why not celebrating it now? And why can't we just allow things to be easy? I'm at that point where gratitude is something that we always say, something big. I'm so thankful for having you in my life. I'm so thankful for this. How about for breathing? The things that are effortless in our life. Breathing, walking, hearing, feeling, loving, all those things are effortless, but we don't really give gratitude to doing that. And there's a thing that said that sometimes we think that it's only the alarm clock that wakes us up in the morning. I mean, if you believe in God or some sort of spirituality, it's like, is it really? It's not just the alarm clock that's waking up in the morning. Yeah, so I think it's just things aren't that complicated sometimes.
I love that, Samantha. I love that, Samantha, the simplicity of everything that you just said. And I will add, one additional thing in relation to something you were talking about earlier in relation to, dose, the DOSE that you described. This is beyond the individual, right? It's not, breathing and living and, just being appreciative and gracious to the fact that you're able to exist, right? But extending that to someone else, and however it is that you do that, whether it's just offering a compliment or helping with a chore or an errand, who knows? But the gratitude that you give towards other people and you actively give it to them, that dose also then carries over into them. And there's a ton of brain science around how gratitude towards other people and expressing it actually improves their well-being and improves their state of mind. So, as we think about how can we create those ripples within ourselves, I think it's incredibly important to think about how we can take those ripples and make sure that they don't only go inward, but they go outward, and they perhaps go outward more than they do go inward. At least that's the headspace that I'm in. I want to give more than I want to take in at the moment. I think there's a fine balance between looking internally and externally. So thank you for that, Samantha. I love the simplicity of that comment.
And thank you, Kyle. That was another, even recounting, noticing other people give gratitude to another person. So if you've seen and you write about or experience one person giving gratitude to another person, you get the chemical gratitude boost. There's been interesting science on that. So I see that you just giving gratitude for Samantha made me feel that gratitude socially over Zoom.
Well, that's kind of like what I was saying in the chat, Sean. Like, if is mindfulness the only thing missing from manifestation? Like if you're not mindful of it and acknowledging it and sharing it, is it real? Like, is that the one thing we're missing to manifest what we want? Because it's like if a tree falls in the woods, right, and no one's around, does it actually make a sound? Like, is there even a tree if no one's there to acknowledge it? So if we never share that, then it's not going out into the world and affecting people and rippling out. And if we keep it to ourselves, none of our creativity is affecting anyone. So those synchronicities need to be shared as well as creativity, right?
Yes, and manifestation is a trigger word for me, or at least it. And one other thing, because this connects. We said presence is incredibly important. So mindfulness, yes, agreed. The other one though is interesting is purpose. Why we're doing what we're doing, the story that we're telling ourselves about why we're doing what we're doing. Just last week, if I want to manifest a giant yacht for myself, and I get upset that I don't get the synchronistic signs towards that manifestation, it's going to help me be an asshole. If I want to manifest more patience and self-love so that I can be a better person to the people I care about, I bet the universe, just my personal faith, is going to come to my assistance more in that second goal.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Joan Ball has a wayfinding club, and one of the things she just bowled me over was when she said, in order to do the wayfinding, that if without a worthy goal, so we're not going somewhere that really means something to us, like really deeply means something to us, it's harder for us to experience these kinds of things. I don't know if I buy that, but at least was like, right, why are we even being synchronistic, taking the blah, blah, blah. Why are we doing that? Ideally, hopefully, not just. Hopefully, there's a purpose there.
So what I've learned.
Sort of thought after what
Well,
Candace
what
said.
I've.
Oh no!
Sorry, I think
Going
there's
across
too
is a
many of
bit
us
of a
talking at the
delay.
moment.
Okay, I just had a thought about what Candace was saying about, recognizing value in others and gratitude. And it also made me think about like the fine balance about, if I've won a race, but no one's watching, have I still won a race? Like you said, has a tree still falling? But it's like, I am still fulfilling my purpose. It made me think of, I was actually watching a movie where the mother missed her child's first steps. And the grandmother said, "Oh, you missed your child's first steps. I tried to call you, but you didn't answer." Does it take away the fact that the child made their first steps if the mother didn't see it? And then it's made me think about how many times do I really do things for recognition of others or for others to give it value, or am I valuing what I am doing? Because that is such a fine line. You do want to be recognized, but you also want to make sure that if you don't get that recognition, I've still achieved something that I wanted to achieve. Maybe that's that whole thing about when we talked about, it's not about the result. It's about, the path, the progress, what you learn each step of the way, rather when you get to the destination.
Kyan and Leslie, I think, are both trying to get in.
Well, what I was going to say is the true choice of your heart already exists. And that is why the path of your heart will pull you towards that destination. What you want is not really the yacht. What you want is the feeling you're going to get from having the yacht, or maybe the social circumstances or whatever. It might be a result, it might be related to that. So the word path was there in what Samantha just said. But there's also something about being witnessed, which I think is very powerful. Yeah. It's very hard for us to witness ourselves.
Yes.
And I think it's one of the prevailing problems of our times.
Yes.
If I had to define narcissism, for me, the narcissist is the one who cannot see himself, who just doesn't get it, you know. And everybody else gets it, but the narcissist doesn't get it. And we all are a little bit in love maybe with our own reflection, sometimes to the extent that we're unable to see beyond it. The good and the bad, you know. And yeah, there's a part of that's there that's human, that's not pathological. And then of course there is a point at which it can become. But yeah, and my last thought was actually about what also what Samantha said, and what I wrote to you, Sean, is, you know, what we know about motivation is that self-assessment makes people happy. The ability to compare myself to myself and not have to compete with other people and compare myself to other people. There's that, you said it a while back as well, comparison is the thief of joy. All the studies have shown that like the carrot and the stick both don't work to move the donkey along, you know, not long term, maybe short term. You can have the carrot in front of the donkey and the donkey will follow the carrot around and you can motivate yourself that way. Or you can punish yourself or punish your employees, and short term, that's going to work. Long term, it won't, never does. And what has shown, what the research has shown is that if people are able to compare themselves to the last version of themselves and see and feel for themselves that they've made an improvement, that's where the joy of learning and studying and growing and making meaning actually of that is discovered. So yeah. And it takes attention to do that as well.
And I was just going to say that as a skeptical Stoic, this is challenging the fuck out of me. I'm just really sitting here going, okay, so now I've got to read about manifestation. Now I've got to go back and read about metaphysics. You're absolutely like this is blowing my mind, and not in like a super positive way. Like I can get there, do shit, try shit, be mindful and present. But when all this like, I don't know. I think one of the things I'd written, I started out with, it literally says synchronicity. Who dis? Because I get it. I get it. And then to me, the serendipity, sometimes I feel like that's what I also see people calling God's plan or fate, or it was meant to be.
Or it's a rom-com starring Josh Hartnett and Gwyneth Paltrow.
But I think like for me, like the serendipity part of it is just, I don't know, finding that connection between like those beautiful small moments of life and appreciating them and recognizing like, oh, there was a connection in those things that happened. And I don't know, maybe someday I'll get to where I feel like there's some deeper meaning in it. I'd have to work super hard. I might not. I think I'm just not going to.
I want to chime in quickly with that, Leslie, because I'm like the serendipity cheerleader and synchronicity cheerleader. And so I wanted to bring up again that night that I ran into you and where are you? Where am I? You and Jeannie at the football game. I'm from Fort Collins. I've never been to a CSU game ever. Not the old stadium, not the new stadium. And it was total serendipity, like synchronicity that the bar I work at shut down. I had a free day. The bar owner bought tickets to that like little area. And I got to run into you. And I had just told Jeannie, like, I really want to see you. I want to get together. And then there you are. And I get to meet you in person. And to me, that's where I was talking about celebrating it instead of, what did I say? Celebrating instead of speculating, and just embracing the simplicity of it. Like, and if you get to play with that story of synchronicity as being magic instead of as being speculating it, that's where the fun is, I guess. But
and yeah, don't read on metaphysics and manifestation. Probably not a good use of your time. from my personal perspective on that.
I would just say, how about noticing? You don't need to do anything except notice.
That's it. That's all it is.
Just notice what's going on. If it doesn't show up for you in that way, who cares?
I'm a real big noticer. Like I'm a big noticer. And I also have this huge web of life. Like when I talk about all the places I've lived, the people I've known, the way my jobs are, I think I just really appreciate when those small things and those connections happen. Like I absolutely love it. Like when we saw Candace on the porch, I was like beyond happy. Like I think I just smiled and smiled and smiled. But I think I put it more to that noticing and connection than maybe I'm doing the stuff. Yeah, I'm not. I'm
so for Leslie, I just put in the chat. It's just meaning making. It's just you making meaning of your experiences. That's what's going on in the brain. And it's
almost like you already mastered it. Like you've already mastered it. And like, we're all like, I'm in elementary school and I'm like, ooh, this was crazy. And you're like, no, I already know we're all connected.
That's life, sweetie.
That's life, baby.
I'm also twice as old as you, so that could be part of it.
I do need to log off, but I'm going to keep this open.
Well, I just wanted to say, before you can notice, you have to allow.
Yes.
And if you can allow, then you'll notice things that you didn't notice before.
I am going to have to go back and listen to the last 20 minutes of this conversation because my mind is blown in a different way. And I took a note that said, "Is God my alarm clock?" Like that's something Samantha said. I'm like, what is happening? I'm missing so much stuff.
Paul, you're muted. Tell us what you just said.
Oh, I just said, oh, we're off the rails now.
We need more time, son.
And a good song. And it's a good song. Off the rails. God's my alarm clock. Boom. Just go for it.
Hi, thank you for reminding me to be receptive and notice.
That's what the science says of psychology. That's people that said they're very synchronistic, serendipitous. They also find themselves very receptive to it. So they almost expect to find it. So they just start paying attention that way, and then they make meaning, and they tell themselves, "I'm the kind of person that sees this everywhere." And lo and behold, that's what happens. So it's this receptivity to these encounters, having these exceptional encounters, exceptional, what we make of them, and then making meaning.
I love that word exceptional, because I think I see them as normal. Like, I just think that shit's going to happen.
So you're advanced, maybe.
She's a master. She's a master.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a hard one for me to close down. So I almost feel like I shouldn't.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
You could close on gratitude. That's always a good one.
Maybe end with a benediction.
May you all have wonderful weeks.
And to you.
Yes, you too.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
May our weeks end not in the same way they started. That's a good
Oh yeah. So did anyone do dashboards, by the way? And does anyone even know what that is? But yeah, let's talk about that another time.
Kai, I'll send you mine that I made, Kai. I made some fun ones. I drew them out, and I know you like the drawing, so I'll send you mine.
I'll say this.
Can I also see them? Because I have a hard time starting anything because I'm like thinking too much about how to start it and the colors.
I'd love to see it, Candace.
Yeah, let's use the email thread if we can. And all it is just trying to get a sense of direction. So if you notice that if you're low on your health gauge, what do you do to bring that up? If you're low on the love gauge, who could you call? So then that becomes part of your purpose. Yes, exactly.
Oh, this is recording, sorry.
So it's just a way of identifying where you're going. This week, so if you look at the big picture, the terrain of this journey of discovery, we start with presence. We get a sense of direction. Am I going to work on work, play, relationships, health, all of them at the same time in different ways? And now we start filling out the map. Where am I? What am I noticing? Who am I thinking about calling? Who's calling me? That's where we are now. Then we'll go to design, prototyping, people, perspective. Cool? Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Good
Happy
to see
Thanksgiving.
everybody.
Bye, y'all. This was
Big
great.
love. I appreciate
Thanks.
all of you. It was a great one. That was a mind blower.